All right, hello everyone. My name is Julia Cunningham. I'm a little sick, so don't mind my snot. Um, so my placement is at the Court Urgent Care Clinic in DC as a part of which is one of the programs of the nonprofit Pathways to Housing. And what we do basically is when either pretrial services or CSOSA, which is Court Services and Criminal Supervision Agency, either of those two bodies like refer someone to get a mental health assessment, we do the mental health assessment. And so I do a psychosocial assessment for those people, and then I decide at the end whether or not I'm going to recommend them to see our psychiatrist, which is a meeting that'll be scheduled later, or for them to see our substance abuse counselor, who does a substance abuse assessment and then hooks them up with either inpatient or outpatient treatment. And also, we're like a 90-day program. Sometimes we go over it. And the idea is that within that time, we help them get on insurance if they're not on insurance. And we refer them to a longer term, like core service agency therapist slash psychiatrist. And we are a voluntary agency. So, um, they can say no to our recommendations. It is a little tricky though, because if I write on the recommendation that they're super, like their PO is going to see that I recommend them to see the psychiatrist and they don't, it's kind of up to the PO what they'll sort of interpret that as. Because I learned not super recently but semi recently that the urgent care clinic is like kind of unique. Like, it doesn't really exist in the same way in other courts. um yeah, so I think it's very much like the relationship between the mental health and like diversion and advocacy efforts in the courts and then like the criminal justice system itself is super still in formation in DC. Yeah, but the case that I wanted to talk about today, I guess we'll call him John. So he came in and I did a psychosocial, but I heard from colleagues that he had come in a different day and been basically like they said that it was clear he was using some substances and he had been like not fit to get the psychosocial. um they didn't really say like a lot of specifics, but I guess he came in a different day and they said he was like a totally different person and that he was like, I guess, high. I don't know, because I had asked, like, are you sure, like, he wasn't, like, he's not just like schizophrenic and like people are presuming that he's high, but they were like, no, like he was like using. So I don't know. Anyway, but when I saw him, so John, he's 33, he's black, he is C Sosa, so he's like, this is after his case. He was incarcerated once when he was a minor, and then more recently for around 4 years. He's currently staying with his mom in DC, but sometimes she kicks him out. And his 10-year-old daughter also lives with them. He's unemployed. And so part of the issue, and he said he has been FD12 before. Um, and so here's what he reported to me. He reported to me that he had no trouble with sleep, no trouble with energy, no trouble with appetite, no depressive symptoms, no anxious symptoms, and no psychosis symptoms. And he said the only drug he's ever used is marijuana, and he said he has not have any past substance abuse. And he reported that his biggest stressor was like using his degree and getting money, like getting a lot of money. Now, um, but the issue is, like, while he was talking to me, his speech was very, like, disorganized. He, like, towards the beginning, he was, like, answering the questions and then he would, like, trail off. But as it continued, like, he would trail off more. He would answer with, like, completely unrelated things, but, like, not full sentences, a lot of fragments. And then he would, like, repeat the fragments. Like, he would say, you know what I mean, you know what I mean. And he would say like, don't judge a book by its cover, and like, waha, and he would like laugh and stuff. So that's kind of one of the first questions I wanted to ask you guys is like, how do you guys put it in your clinical notes when you're putting like a patient, like how do you put it in your clinical notes when someone is being unclear, like their speech is super unclear? Because and then I'll answer how I do it is I always say, instead of like he is this, I say he reported this, because that's I'm just saying like what someone reported in the moment. And then also like I add like this part was especially unclear or stuff like that. So he also did say that he at one point was connected to a core service agency called Venture Wellness, but he could not recall any past diagnoses. But he said at one point he was on a strong medication. So I scheduled him for a substance abuse assessment and to see our psychiatrist, because my boss directly told me to schedule him for a substance abuse assessment. And then when I went in the next week, I saw that he hadn't gone to the substance abuse assessment, and it had been deleted from the schedule. And for a second I was scared, because I was like, Julia, did you drop the ball and not do what you were told to do? But it had been deleted because he did not say that he was doing any substances. So, and then I called him to remind him of his psych appointment, and his mom picked up. And so it's clear like it's not his phone, it's his mom's phone. And then after his psych appointment, I called again to try to set up the follow up, and they were in the car together. And she handed the phone to him, so it was like, good, I'm talking to him, because it's a consent and privacy issue if I'm talking to her and not him. But she was like, you have to do it soon, like you're talking to yourself, like you have to do it soon. So in that moment, like it was like my question again for you guys is, how do I navigate like talking to a client's family when like in the moment I can't, in the moment while we're on the phone together, have him sign a consent form, but also I want to de-escalate and be like, he did come to his initial one, he needs to come back in 2 to 3 weeks. Like that's not him not getting it done, it's a follow-up appointment. What I decided in the moment was, I was like, you'll come back in 2 weeks for your follow-up appointment, it'll be this day. And then I texted the number, the date, because it is written down as his number. So and also they were fighting in the car, and it seemed unsafe. But yeah, that's kind of an issue, is like, how do we navigate like getting the consent from a client for their family member to know about their stuff, when one, he may not be considered like competent enough to give that consent, and also he might not want to give that consent, but she is constantly like popping up, if that makes sense. So those are kind of the bigger issues. And then on a macro level, I wanted to ask you guys what you think about like what kind of policies you imagine for dealing with someone who may not meet the competency standards for the court, but who does not like recognize that in themselves, or like is not willing to, like admit to that. Sorry, like in general, like how do you navigate that? And yeah, what else was I gonna say? That's mainly it. So like, what would you guys suggest regarding his situation with his mother, and like trying to coordinate between them both? And also, what are your ideas for macro level coordination between our agency and like there's one part, then so we are separate from when judges recommend that people get competency tests. We are a completely separate body. And his like trial is already like done. So, and then there's also mental health court and substance abuse court. Like on the macro level, do any of you guys have any expertise on like precedents for like retroactively getting somebody's thing expunged because like they weren't competent enough to stand trial that already happened? Yeah, and and also in general, what do you guys do when someone is exhibiting but denying symptoms of substance abuse or like psychosis and mental health issues? And I think I am not a doctor. Obviously, our psychiatrist, I think, tentatively diagnosed him with schizophrenia, but I don't know. And it, as we all know from our earlier classes, you can't do that diagnosis unless someone, I mean, this is my understanding, unless someone exhibits symptoms for a certain amount of time without substance abuse. And yeah, so But yeah. Anyway, so in general, what do you do when someone is exhibiting but denying symptoms? All right, thank you.